the MCAT Cars podcast, session number 5. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or are a slow reader like me, Jack Westin and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you are ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Now, welcome back to the MCAT Cars podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week. I'd love for you to check out all the other podcasts we have to offer at mededmedia.com, including the Pre-Med Years, which will help you not only with MCAT Prep, where I had Jack Westin on the podcast a while ago, but also with your applications once you are done with the MCAT. Again, that's the Pre-Med Years, another podcast from Meded Media. This week, we're diving into an interesting article about horror. All right, Jack Westin back for some more MCAT Cars. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's your day going?
It's going. I'm excited to read and to comprehend and to hopefully improve my car section. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you can get my car score up, then I may want to go and take the MCAT again and improve my score from my 27 from back in the day and maybe get shoot for like a 505, 510.
That'd be an epic comeback, right? Well, I mean, you did well enough, right? I mean, all you need is a score to get you into
enough.
Medical, right?
Yeah. But it'd be cool to say, oh, my score went from a 27 to a 500 something, right? Just the numbers. Like for somebody who doesn't know the new scale, I think that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah.
All right. So we are reading a new passage today. Anything that you want to talk about this passage before we jump in?
It's a more interesting, I would say, passage than the ones that we've been reading about. So, the other ones were more, I would say, mundane, boring kind of history, or maybe you're not interested in Gizmodo or articles on technology. But this one would be a little bit on the hopefully easier side in terms of reading. We'll see how hard it is when we read it.
All right. So, in Ray Bradbury's horror short story, The Next in Line from 1955, a woman visits the catacombs in Guanajuato, Mexico. Mummified bodies line the wall. Oh, wait. So I kept reading. So first sentence, it's laying out kind of this short story, kind of what happens in the short story. This woman visits catacombs in Mexico.
Okay.
Mummified bodies line the walls. Just painting the picture some more. So in the catacombs, you have mummified bodies, which makes sense. Lying awake the next night, haunted by her Maccabee tour, she finds that her heart was a bellows forever blowing upon a little coal of fear, an ingrown light which her inner eyes stared upon with unwanting fascination. Whoa. So lying awake the next night. So it sounds like, and saying haunted. So it sounds like what she experienced wasn't good because she's haunted by the tour that she had and lying awake. Her heart was a bellows forever blowing upon a little coal of fear. So bellows, I think of a bellow like blowing a fire, like the little air thing that you pump up and down. That'd be hard if you didn't know what a bellow was. And then a little coal of fear, like trying to get the little coal to light up. So her heart was, it sounds like her heart was trying to make this fear something bigger, maybe?
Well, I mean, what does it seem like? What does it seem like is going on here? Like when you see mummified bodies, is that a, like, imagine you go into somewhere, right, in Mexico somewhere, and you see mummified bodies. Like, what do you think of when you see that, right? I'm freaking out, right? It's kind of...
Well, it depends. Are they supposed to be there, or is it like Goonies, where you're running into bodies and you weren't expecting them to be there?
Well, if you keep reading, it says lying awake the next night, haunted.
Yeah.
So haunted tells us maybe the authors, or whoever this person is feeling scared. This woman is feeling scared, right? And then it seems like something crazy is going on. She finds that her heart was a bellows forever blowing upon a little coal of fear. Whoa, what?
Hmm.
It just seems very scary, and it seems very dark and twisted in a way. And I think that's all you really have to get out of this. And they even say a horror short story.
Hmm.
So at the beginning, they're mentioning what, like they're describing kind of what it is. So all you got to realize is this is just a horror story. That's it.
Okay. And that it scared this person.
It's
Whatever
this
happened.
person's exactly.
Okay. Our present era is one in which the heart of culture is blowing hard upon a coal of fear, and the fascination is everywhere. So it's interesting that they're bringing up this coal of fear thing and blowing on it, and that the fascination is everywhere. So the fascination with fear, it sounds like, is what the author is telling us.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird sentence because the author is bringing in elements of the story and trying to figuratively explain the current stage of horror, right? So our present era of this horror is fascination. So whatever the heart of culture is blowing meant, it was a horror kind of thing. It was kind of a scary thing, and that seems to be fascinating us.
Yeah.
Okay.
By popular consent, horror has been experiencing what critics feel obliged to label a, quote, golden age. And so again, the author is saying that horror stories or horror in general is coming into a golden age, meaning it's a good thing. Like it's coming into an era where people like it, it's popular, etc.
Now there are students that think, how do I know what golden age means? Right? Well, how is gold? I mean, golden age would be common way of saying it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not familiar with it, you could use the word golden. Gold is usually rare. It's usually popular, or something that's very expensive, something that's very good in a way. So you may be thinking, well, isn't that subjective? Golden, right? Thinking of it in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Not when they present it in this way. Not when they say golden age, because when they say there's an age, there's a time, and it's golden, you could probably assume it's a positive thing, like you said.
Yeah.
It's just an experience thing. When you read like this, and when you read these or listen to these kinds of podcasts, our goal is really to help you try to understand different ways the author presents stuff, so that it's not completely new when you start studying or when you take the test, right? So this is a perfect example of something that someone who's not great at comprehending things may not understand, but being exposed to it will give you a better chance of understanding things similar to it in the future.
In terms of ticket sales, 2017 was the biggest year in the history of horror cinema. And in 2018, Hereditary and A Quiet Place have been record-breaking successes. So the golden age, I think, from the previous sentence is just being backed up here with data that shows ticket sales are showing that people are going to movies, seeing horror films.
That's it. So even if you didn't know what golden age meant, here you go. They're literally telling you that golden age, was a time where they were doing really well. Ticket sales were high, right? Biggest in history, record breaking. So that is associating golden age to increased demand or better or higher amounts. Okay.
In both the United States and the United Kingdom, sales of horror literature are up year over year, an uptick that industry folk partly attribute to the wild popularity of Netflix Stranger Things from 2016. So again, more data, this time breaking into literature, so books, that book sales are up as well, and then giving a specific reference to a TV show that potentially as a reason to why that books are selling more.
Yeah, sounds good. So they're watching this show and then they go buy the book or whatever. A couple of things to mention here. You brought this up. They're going into books now, right? So horror literature. So it doesn't seem like it's limited to just horror like movies or short stories, but it could be a range of literature. Also, the fact that they mention U.S. and U.K. That seems very subtle, but knowing where we're talking about this could be very important. So keep that in mind. Like when you're reading, think of the time period. They were talking about the 50s. Now they're talking about the current era, and also the place. So United States, UK. All right.
And this success isn't merely commercial. So commercial meaning like big companies making money. Right. I'm assuming that's what they're saying, that they're hinting at that other things are doing well as well.
Okay.
Traditionally a rather maligned genre, these days horror is basking in the glow of critical respectability. So critical respectability. So commercial, it was saying previously making lots of money, but this sentence transitions into the critical respectability. Now, some students may have trouble with the critical respectability, meaning critical in some people's minds is, oh, that's bad, but they're talking about critics, writers, and that writers are giving it respect as well.
Yeah.
Those who are reviewing.
Yeah, exactly. So critical respectability just refers to respect in general, right? Whether it's from critics or not. I think the key here is to distinguish commercial from respect. Just because some movie or some story or whatever sells well doesn't mean it's respected. So the author's making that distinction that, look, you can sell a lot, but that doesn't mean you're respected amongst our community of critics. Now the author's saying, look, it's not just selling well. It's not just a golden age in terms of monetary success, but it's also a success in terms of its respect amongst the community. Think of a movie that you may think was terrible, right? Like got maybe like a 10 on Rotten Tomatoes or 20 or whatever, but did really, really well at the box office, right? So they're kind of making that distinction, okay?
As the New York Times remarked this June, horror, quote, has never been more bankable and celebrated than it is right now. And so again, New York Times, a critical piece, potentially a review piece, saying that horror is making lots of money and it's being celebrated. So just kind of backing up all of the other data that they gave us.
Sounds good.
As any historian of the genre will tell you, horror has had previous golden ages. So bringing in, again, the golden age that we're in now, but saying that this isn't the first time. I ask a historian, it's happened before.
Sounds good.
Perhaps ours is just a random quirk of popular taste. So ours meaning our current golden age, I'm assuming that's what the author means?
Yes, absolutely. So ours is a random quirk. So maybe it's just random that it's popular today, right? Okay.
But perhaps not, or maybe not. Perhaps we are intoxicated by horror today because the genre is serving a function that others aren't. So he's potentially, or she, the author is potentially hinting at why we like horror so much, and that it's serving a function. What that function is, we don't know yet. And that function that can't be served by other genres.
Excellent. That's it. So others can't mimic its function, whatever that function is. Okay.
Yeah. The next sentence is just one word, can't. So others aren't or can't serve.
Right. So just because you are not does not mean you cannot. Now the author is making this a fact of, no one can do it.
Yeah.
Right. So
except horror.
Exactly. So a lot of students will see aren't and think, well, isn't that can't? And the author is just making that distinction again. Okay.
Horror's roots run deep, but they twist themselves into forms very modern. So it sounds like the author is trying to give us a little bit of a history lesson of where horror comes from, and why potentially we're in a golden age with its function in the forms, the modern forms that it's in.
So it seems like you're deviating into a discussion of just the history of horror. right? And then maybe in the future they'll talk about why it can't. It's setting us up for why other genres cannot do what horror is doing today, right? So it's just saying that horror runs deep. It's in the past. It's been around, but it seems like they're twisting into different forms. So they're changing into the modern stage. Okay.
The imagination's conversion of fear into art offers a dark and piercing mirror. Interesting. The mirror part is interesting to me because it maybe is saying that we like it because there's some dark side of us that we see in the movies that we like. Maybe?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great interpretation. So something about our imaginations converting a fear into art. So it's something about how it's an art form. Again, we're not really clear what it means when they say dark and piercing mirror. It could be us. It could be something that represents us, that we like about it. As long as you keep track of the fact that it's doing something other genres cannot. Horror is doing something that's unique, right? It provides some function that others cannot. All this other stuff is fluff. So this last sentence is fluff, but it gets you thinking, what is that thing that horror does that's so unique? Hopefully they'll talk about it in the future.
My earliest horror memory is Stay Out of the Basement from 1992, one of R.L. Stein's Goosebumps series of young adult novels. So the author is saying that they have a history with horror and gives us the story that they liked. In the story, a botanist accidentally creates a hybrid plant clone of himself. So just giving us a little bit of the backstory of the story that the author likes.
Yep.
When the clone comes to life, he tries to steal his humanoid self's life. Again, there's more story of the story. The botanist's children unmask the imposter, and in a mess of green blood and plant mush, the clone is felled with an axe. So the more story of exactly what happened with Stay Out of the Basement. The rescued father disposes of the rest of the mutating plant matter, and the family is all set to live happily ever after. More story. But at the very end, the daughter is standing in the garden and feels a small plant nudging her ankle. More story. The plant whispers to her, "Please help me. I am your father." Oh, that's freaky. This good story, Stay Out of the Basement, I might have to read it. Stay Out of the Basement is no masterpiece, but I was young and it struck me cold. So the author is just reliving his or her childhood about reading this and how it really struck a chord in the author and potentially why they still like horror at this point.
Couple things that you did that you naturally did, right? You realized that the author is just describing a book, right, that they read in the past, right? And all this other stuff fit into that. Just like all these descriptions fit into that book in your mind, right? If a student read that first sentence too quickly or misread that sentence, they're very confused as they read this paragraph because they don't know why we're talking about stealing his humanoid self-life. We don't know why we're talking about the botanist's children unmask the imposter. And this seems to be very offbeat with everything else we're talking about. So the key is to understand why we're talking about it. We're talking about this because this is just the author's history with this book. Right. So great. And then at the end, it says it struck me cold. What does that mean? What is that trying to convey here?
Struck me cold. That it just left a lasting impression, I think. Yeah,
something along those lines, that it was very impactful, right? It was something maybe bad, maybe good, probably good because we're talking about the golden age. But overall, just something that resonated with the author. Okay? Sounds good. So this paragraph, how would you summarize it?
That it's just the author reliving a story from the past, a book that they read.
Yeah, sounds good.
Horror is what anthropologists call bioculture. So maybe it sounds like the author is now trying to explain a little bit with anthropologists, trying to tell us why it's so important or why it's so impactful to us.
You gotta be careful. They don't say that. All they say is horror is some biocultural thing, right? So you're probably on the right path. You know, like this is where a lot of students get confused. Why did the author bring up their point of view when we were talking about how horror seems to be serving some kind of function? Again, this is like we talked about in the previous podcast. They're setting up the scene. It's a mechanism. They're setting up what's going on in order to describe it in a new way or to point it out, in a way that the author hasn't before. Mm-hmm. So remember, just because we bring up a new paragraph that seemingly has nothing to do with the prior paragraph, doesn't mean that they won't connect it in some important way later down the road.
Okay.
All right.
It is about fears we carry because we are primates with a certain evolved biology. The corruption of the flesh, the loss of our offspring. So they're explaining this bioculture, the anthropologists, the fears that we have, because basically we die and we lose children, and that's kind of this innate fear that we all have, and how that potentially is why we like horror. Kind of going back to an earlier paragraph where he talked about the dark and piercing mirror.
Right. The corruption of the flesh, they go on to say the loss of our offspring. So they kind of refer to the same thing. Whenever you see a clause after another clause, they're kind of clarifying the prior clause.
Okay.
So you don't need to know what the corruption of the flesh means. It's just another way of saying the loss of our offspring. Now, you did something that I would be careful of. You went back and connected it to the prior paragraph, the imagination's conversion of fear into art. I would be careful with that. Because that was not a very clear sentence that we understood. It's not bad to hint at it or to think about it, but be careful connecting dots. Okay. Right? A lot of students are good at connecting dots, and that can lead to a lot of mistakes on the test. All you got to do, guys, or if you're listening at home, and Ryan, just make sure you understand what's in front of you, and then at the end you can connect the dots. Right? Okay. Not as you're reading. Go ahead.
It is also about fears unique to our sociocultural moment. The potential danger of genetically modifying plants. So, sociocultural moment, we have this GMO fear, the non-GMO stuff, and so the author's bringing up stuff that's happening in culture now, and tying it together with our fears.
Sounds good.
The first type of fear is universal. The second is more flexible and contextual. The first type of fear is universal. So I'm assuming the first type of fear he mentioned is the corruption of the flesh, and the second type is the sociocultural fear of the genetically modifying plants. Is that where he's going?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's not that clear yet, but we just know that there's some biocultural stuff going on and there's fear involved. That's all we really need to know so far. Go ahead.
Their cold currents meet where all great art does its work, down among the bottomless caves on the seabed of consciousness. Wow. This is where I get lost as a reader, is when the author tries to get super fancy. And I'm like, I can't read like that. I need very straightforward language. And so I think a lot of people get lost here.
You're absolutely right. That's what makes this test so hard. So you said something very important. You said, I just want to read regular English, right? How much of a passage do you think you need to understand? We kind of talked about this in our last year's podcast, right? So how much of a passage do you think you need to understand in order to get a 132, a perfect score? How much do you think you need to understand? 0 to 100%.
Ooh,
right?
Let's go 50. 50%.
Less. You need
Ooh.
about 20%, 25%.
No
This
way.
stuff, yeah, this stuff is all, I would even say 15%. All this stuff is all fluff. All this stuff is fluff right here. So you really need to know how great art does its work at the bottomless caves of the seabed of consciousness? No. There are English majors that take my course and they think I have to know that. You don't need to know that. All you needed to know was that there are two different types of fear, right? This fear of losing your offspring, this fear of something about contemporary culture coming into play, and then all this other stuff is just fluff.
But
So
as you're in the heat of the moment, right? You're Jack Westin. You've been doing this for umpteen years now. As a pre-med student in the heat of the moment, how is he or she supposed to know, oh, this is fluff?
confidence and knowing what you understand and sticking to what you understand. So if you're confident with what you understand, this stuff should not faze you. And a big thing is preparation, experience, right? So having that experience, having someone show you, hey, look, this is not that important, right? And then next time you see something like this, you're going to catch on to it. You're going to be like, oh yeah, that seems like it's not important because of this or that. So it's just really experience, practicing, preparation. Once you see a lot of these kinds of articles, you're going to start noticing trends. And that's what I'm here for, right? Like I try to show those trends.
Okay. Lurking here, a vision of myself paralyzed in the dirt, invisible to those I love. Yeah. So just getting fancy. I don't know what the author's trying to tell me.
Keep track of what you already know. What do you know?
Just fear.
Fear, right? Biocultural. So horror is some kind of something to do with fear, right? And if you just realize that horror is about fears of our species, about our contemporary culture, that's it. That's all you need to know. All this other stuff was just fluff. I could just literally cross it out, not need to read that, and I'd still know what's going on. Right? So don't panic if you see this. This will occur. This is going to happen. But if you're confident, you'll be fine. This goes back to the sciences. You know, if you read a science passage, you're usually not going to be afraid of something that you've never read before because you have confidence. You've seen other things similar to it. So you're more willing to pay attention. You're more willing to keep an open mind. But when it comes to this, what happens for most students, Ryan? What do you think? Like when they read this last sentence, right? Like they usually cave in and they.
Oh yeah, that's what I would do. I'd be like,
yeah.
C, next passage.
That's funny. Yeah. So it's just keeping your cool under pressure, which is what physicians need to do, right?
Yeah. All right. So it's funny. At the beginning of this one, you're like, oh, it's a little bit of a better topic, right? And I was like, this was probably the hardest passage yet. So I think we have different ideas on what makes a passage good or not.
You know, so that is the key to understanding cars, is that I may like a topic that you may not like, right? So you might have liked the topic on
quantum computing.
Yeah, but there are thousands of students who could care less about computers. You don't even know how to use Facebook, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a bad physician. It just means that you have to have an open mind and read a lot of different sources so that you're used to reading anything, whether it's politics or government or that's the same thing, but politics or history or philosophy or art history or whatever it is, that you're always going to be prepared for it. So practice is huge here.
All right, so there you have it. Very, very interesting one. I like horror stuff. I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead and zombies and stuff like that. So this was an interesting one to get into horror and how we're undergoing this golden age. If you want some more practice, some more in-depth practice, some more help, like a course designed to help you master the cars section, go check out medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin. Going to that link will activate a $100 coupon that you can apply towards the MCAT Cars Strategy course. Or you can text the word CARS coupon, that's all one word, to 44222, and we'll send you a link immediately with that medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin link in there as well. You'll get over 70 hours of instruction, an interactive online classroom. And this is really like we mentioned at the beginning. If you are ESL, if you're a pre-med just struggling with the MCAT in general, whether you're ESL or not, if you're a slow reader like me, this course will work on timing. And again, it's applicable to not just the car section, but the rest of the science sections as well, and even psych-soc. So gain confidence, get a clear, proven method from Jack Westin, medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT Cars podcast. When you use the links provided in this podcast, you're helping to support MedEd Media and the podcasts that we produce. Not only do you get a discount, but we earn a small commission as well. Thank you for your support.